Welcome to HIListically Speaking. I'm Hilary Russo, certified holistic health coach and health and wellness journalist. This is an empowering place to explore self-awareness, self-love, and transformation through health, healing, and humor. By sharing life-changing experiences, knowledge, and guests with varied expertise, we'll explore who we are, how we got that way, and what it takes to be a happy and healthy grown-up. Mind, body, and spirit. I'm glad you're here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to HIListically Speaking. I am so happy to have you joining us today. But more importantly, I cannot wait for you to meet today's guest, Betsy Murphy. She is a writer, a performer, a mother, a grandmother, a guide for women to retrieve the hidden parts of their stories. Because sometimes, my friends, moving forward means first going back to reclaim the lost parts of ourselves. She has the most amazing books out there: Autobiography of an Orgasm, which I'm reading, Beyond O, Write On, a daily writing practice for anyone with a story to tell, and the soon-to-be released this summer, Chasing Temples. Betsy, this has been a long time coming. I first met you in 2019 when we were on a retreat, separate retreats, I should add, in beautiful Costa Rica. You were there on the Qoya retreat, which I'd love to touch on a little bit. And I was there on another retreat, and our lives collided. And I remember meeting you during dinner one afternoon, and I said, I have to have you on my podcast. And I'd not even launched the podcast yet, but I knew I wanted the conversation to happen. So thank you for holding space for me and joining me on HIListically Speaking and sharing with our listeners. It's good to have you.
I am so happy to be here. And I also love our connection. We both went to Southern Methodist University.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And one thing about retreats in Costa Rica, and we were on separate retreats, and these retreats have really full schedules, but also spacious schedules. But you naturally just tend to, I guess, be pulled to people that are going to end up at, my garden dinner table in my fantasy mind someday. And you were one of those people of just every time I'd see you, your energy was so incredible. And I just loved witnessing you. So I'm so glad that we keep connecting.
Oh, it was such a pleasure. You were a hard lady to track down, though. You were like a social butterfly, because the Qoya retreat was really one that you were over. You were like the mama bear of the entire retreat, which, by the way, was much larger than my retreat. And what I love mentioning about this, and I've shared this with others, the Qoya group was, I don't know, how many did you have? Maybe about 50 or more?
Maybe 54, I think, that year.
Yeah. And we had about 10 or 12 ladies. And the thing is, both were so intimate. And while we were there on this separate retreat, it really didn't feel separate, because we were really the only two groups at the Blue Spirit Resort in Nosara, Costa Rica, a beautiful place to spend the week. But we've kind of fused together, and you welcomed us in. You welcomed our smaller group in to take part in a Qoya adventure, I'd like to call it. It was just so beautiful, releasing and being part of it. And I wish we had done it sooner in the week, because I think I'd be like, I'm adding that to my schedule too, because everyone embraced us. It was truly a gift to be a part of it. And even to this day, I still keep in touch with a number of people that I had met at the retreat, including you. What a beautiful way for women to come together and celebrate womanhood, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting on Qoya retreats. If there are other retreats there, a lot of times people end up, taking our classes during the week, or even completely, joining the retreat. And the one thing I love about Qoya, and it's Qoya, and it's an embodiment practice specifically created for women, but there are no levels in Qoya and no way to do it wrong. So it was so easy to invite 10 more people into the class and both make space for you and allow your own bodies to take up space in moving in a way that feels good to you and feels true to you. And as much as I love that, I love the energy of the 62 of us dancing together. And then I also lead smaller retreats. I love smaller retreats where I combine Qoya and writing, or just writing retreats, because especially if we're writing our stories, I really want everybody's voice to be heard. And even though we are able to do that in a Qoya retreat, that specific retreat in Costa Rica is a collective where we have 7 teachers. So I was only teaching one class. And so anyway, there are not all Qoya retreats are that big, but that's one retreat that I return to year after year. And unfortunately, this year it was just the canceled at the last minute due to the quarantine. But everybody I know will be back next year if we can travel.
Oh, absolutely. It was an anniversary too. It was a pretty big year. Wasn't it a 10-year
I know.
anniversary or
Yeah, and what's amazing is it sells out. Like, we announce it in September, the retreat is in March, and then it sells out in October. And people come from all over the world, and it's a very diverse group. And the other great thing about it is we'll have women on the retreat from 18 years old to 80 years old, and everybody just you know you dances at their own pace, and you show up as you are, and you leave feeling more like yourself. The one thing about Qoya is it tends to shake free all those places in ourselves where we are conditioned, first as girls and women, of how we're supposed to move in our bodies. And with Qoya, we're saying, look for the movement that feels good, and then can you do anything else that will make it feel even better? So in a Qoya class, there are 62 people moving together in yoga or in dance, and nobody's doing it the same way, but they're doing it the way that feels good and feels true in their body at that moment. And once again, that is a form of expressing ourselves freely, and not you know modifying our voices or bodies in any way to try to look like someone else or do it right like somebody else.
Oh, and it totally flowed right through me. I've never been a dancer. I've always called myself a mover, which seems to be all you really need to be, because even though we were all in our own movement, we were all flowing in alignment, which I thought was so beautiful. And I love that you touch on the fact that there's people of all ages and all practices, and people, just every one of these women came together and embraced each other. And it even continued when we were on the beach and watching people at the sunset just moving on the beach. There was just such a unbelievable flow to the entire experience that I was hooked. And then it kind of leads into what you were saying about being safe in your body, safe in our bodies, right? You had spent a little time there sharing your book, The Autobiography of an Orgasm. You did a reading, which was incredible. I bought the book right away. And of course, the word orgasm is going to spark attention, right? But I don't think people, if they just read the title, are going to be, it's going to kind of pique some interest, like, what's this about? Is this going to be a Harlequin novel? Is this going to be a book about having really good sex and how to have the best orgasm? And it was so much more. Unfortunately, with this book that I got, and I have to mention this, and we shared this earlier, I got through 3/4 of the book, but I was on a vacation reading it, because it's always like that go-to that I keep. And I'm an underliner and a highlighter of all my books. I reference pages, and I loved this book. But my backpack was stolen when I was down in Florida in the fall, and there were only 3 things in the backpack. There was my raincoat, my new pair of sneakers, the book, and the backpack itself, which was new. So those were important things. When the backpack was stolen, I was most upset that I didn't get to finish the book. And when I reported it to the police, I mentioned the book. I didn't care so much about the shoes and the raincoat, or even this brand new backpack I put down some dollars on. It was the book. So I want you to share more about Autobiography of an Orgasm, because it was really an amazing piece of writing.
Well, I thank you for buying the book, and there's another one on the way to you. And there's
Aw.
a twist at the ending. And I do think when when people ask me what I do, and I say I'm a writer, and then they'll say, "Oh, well, what are some of the names of some of your books?" And for a while, Autobiography of My Orgasm was my first book and my only book, so I had to say that name. And and you'd see people's faces and they'd either move away, and a lot of times that was women, or they would move in, and the men would laugh and say, oh, well, what can you tell me that I don't know?
Mm.
And it was interesting. I at first would laugh too, because I was still, even though I'd written the book, I was uncomfortable talking about my sensual path. And actually, when I was first writing the book, it was not a book about my sensual path. It was a book about my life traveling between the US and Zimbabwe, where I went back and forth. This was post-divorce. And I thought, oh, interesting story about, a woman midlife traveling between the US and Africa. And every time I would get in a writing circle and would read, some of my stories, share some of my stories out loud that I was writing, one of my mentors said, this is not a book about your life between US and Africa. This is a book about your sensual path. And I said, I could never tell the truth about that. I have too many secrets. And that was one of those moments that I had this zing through my body. And I thought, oh my God, that's the story I have to tell. And at the time I was 45 years old. And I had this lifetime of secrets around not feeling safe in my body. And Qoya, interestingly enough, was before I started Autobiography of an Orgasm, Qoya was part of my ways to heal my body. I think when we think that we've had some sort of abuse against our body or trauma against our body, the best thing to do is, go to a doctor, go to a therapist that can help you, have an orgasm, help you heal. And for me, Qoya was a huge part of my healing, because it was simply inviting me to move in the way that felt good, to move in my body that felt true. And much like my orgasm that I didn't think I even had, my body had the potential to have, because I was always running away from feeling anything. So the book is, it's less about the trauma and what happened to me, and more about my reclamation, after having 4 children, getting a divorce, and wondering, why relationships weren't working out. And I was so easy to look at the men and blame everyone. And then I was like, oh, well, I'm the common person in all these situations. Let me look at myself. And I realized it had been, years since I felt safe in my body. And I kept going back. When was the last time I felt safe in my body? Before my kids were born, before I got married, before college at SMU, before. And I came back to this memory when I was 6. I've had an experience of something happening, to me without my consent or permission, and me not having the words to say, to speak up, and also having a lot of shame and judgment around that, and carrying it with me for 40 years. Once again, at the time, I was like in my 30s. I was living in a body that was very physically fit. I was a swimmer. I was a runner. I ate well. So I lived in this body that was very physically fit. I was constantly sick with especially sore throats, and for 40 years. And when I started researching, is it possible even for my body to feel good? Not even to have an orgasm. Is it possible for my body to feel good? I started, looking at courses with experts in sensuality. I started, just being called to things that, is dance going to make me feel good? Is taking a walk in nature going to make me feel good? So exploring, anything that, was sparking my curiosity, but also not having an end goal of, yes, I would like to have an orgasm, to know what it is before I die in this lifetime. That was on my bucket list. but
Yeah.
also not having any judgment, like being very compassionate and curious with my research, because for so many years I had so much judgment and shame against my body. So the book is actually can be fun to read. And this is where I think it's important when we do tell our stories, and you are a storyteller and you help women tell their stories, is when we share our stories out loud, it's important how we tell them, because if we're telling it from a place of trauma, that can cause more damage both to ourselves and other people who are listening. You heard me in Costa Rica do my solo show which was telling, the story from a place of this happened to me and this is how I healed. A trauma changed the biology of my body, and this is how I changed it back. So we have to have some responsibility as storytellers. And in therapeutic group settings, we can tell our stories about the trauma. But if we're sharing our story out loud or writing about it, on social networking, we have a responsibility of not doing any new damage. So if you're when you're ready to tell your story, and not everybody has to write a book
Mhm,
about
mhm,
the truth of their sensual path. But what I will say is I've never had a sore throat since releasing my book. I have
mhm.
this super immune system. I travel all over the world for teaching. I am never sick. So when we look at our daily practices of what we do to keep our body healthy, how are you expressing yourself in the world? Orgasm is a natural way to express yourself. Writing is a natural way to express yourself. It's a way to detox your experiences that you have just by simply doing 15-minute writing prompts a day.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different therapeutic and cathartic means that we can approach ourselves. And when I was reading your book as well, I thought, wow, this isn't a book about what I originally thought it was about. Even though you gave us kind of um, an idea from reading it out loud, there was more to it that that I really connected to within the pages. And as someone who has, also gone through a divorce and gone through a lot of pain from, and trauma from my younger years. It doesn't necessarily have to be sexual abuse, but it could be a different kind of abuse that we're causing on ourselves and blaming ourselves. Because I think women have a tendency to do that. We're nurturers. So we go to this, we go within and we think, what's wrong with us? Right. So this book allowed me to kind of shed that and really see like, hey, I'm empowered, you know? And that's what I love about the book. And you had these little moments, like you really got raw and you really shared what you were doing. And I bravo to that because you shared it was you shared in a way that gave people the gift of knowing they're not alone, and also there are ways to explore who you are inside and out. So that was beautiful, and I don't know if I've ever come across any kind of literature that allows that. Uh, exploring mindfully, yes, but it was even deeper than that. So thank you for that gift.
You're
Um,
welcome. I
yeah.
Yeah, and once again, when this was released in 2014, this was pre Me Too movement, and
Mm,
one thing that I'm finding is, and when Me Too movement really picked up, it was a moment that for me, as someone that was so afraid to speak up for so many years, it was incredible to have so many women speak up, and men, and at the same time there was so much anger, which we need to, get the anger out, and blaming that. What my book does is take you through my experience where I'm not, I've already dealt with my anger. And what I'm doing is looking at my role in this. I was like, well, how did it happen that I wouldn't speak up when I was sexually assaulted when I was 16? Why wasn't I speaking up? I was really, instead of blaming that this happened to these, that these men did this to me, I was looking at myself of what is it in our world that, in my world, why am I not speaking up and how can I change that? And this is where I feel like we can, the Me Too movement, can we expand it to include us saying this happened to me and this is what I'm doing now, and because the attack and the blame is not going to change anything. And I absolutely, with especially men doing most of the it, uh, attacks and assaults that have come up, these men, absolutely every one of them, have experienced assault in their life, probably during childhood.
mm,
So they are
yeah.
not, expressing that too. So this is my goal is, can we all just tell the truth about our sensual path? Listen, and the rest of us listen deeply and without needing to react or shame or blame. And can we just listen?
Mhm.
And if that would be a great start to healing our how our body expresses itself, both in the bedroom, in the boardroom with work, and in the world.
I touch on this a lot in my classroom because I'm also a college professor, as I think I've shared with you, and teaching storytelling, presentation on camera, broadcasting. The one thing I tell my students is you have to master the art of listening. It is so important for you not to only listen to others and hold space for others, because it's not always about having to share your voice in the moment. Give people the space to share, but listen to your own voice. Go within, sit in silence, be aware of what is being said to you, and the answers will come. So, being a powerful listener is so much more important than just being someone who hears you and hearing yourself. So, I love that you touched on that. Thank you. So, going beyond the O, that's your next book that I have a lot of reading to do, Betsy. Is beyond the O really what it says right there? It's going beyond that part of the book where you are the first book where you're finding being safe in your body, your voice, and the voices of those around you?
Yes, and also the consequences of speaking up.
Mm,
So once again, just because we have found ourselves and healed our bodies and then want to share, that doesn't mean everybody is going to be saying, great, good, great for you. I'm so happy for you. After I wrote Autobiography of an Orgasm, I was very, very sensitive to the scenes that I did write that included men from my life. And I changed the names and identifying factors, but I did run them by I think 4 men, just their segments. But it was the first time I had to go back to men from my past and say, oh, by the way, we had this great love story, and but one thing I didn't tell you was I never had an orgasm with you the whole time we were together, and but that I had had trauma in my body and an unexpressed pain from not just one abuse, but multiple times. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to share that with you when we were together, but I'm healed now. And
mm,
I've written this story. And once again, one threatened to sue me. Another gave me his blessing to tell, our story. But in general, none of them said, not in general, none of them said, I'm sorry that had happened to you. I understand. And I'm so glad you've healed. All they could hear is, you didn't have an orgasm with me. And so once again, how can we show up for these hard conversations? I mean, for me, it would have been easier not to tell the story because I was having to go back to family and close friends and say, listen, I've lied about this my whole life. I've been ashamed about this my whole life. And I'm telling you now. And people in my family, some of them didn't read the book. Some of them didn't, still don't want to talk about it. And that I wasn't prepared for that. With that, I also started gathering in circles with and receiving letters from hundreds of women from around the world, who said, oh my gosh, I've never told this to anybody before, but that happened to me too. I've never had an orgasm. I was raped in college. I was raped by my uncle. I was raped by my grandfather. I am ashamed of my body. I don't feel safe in my body. And I'm so glad that you've healed, but I don't have the time to take the courses you take. I can't go dance in Costa Rica for a week. I don't have a partner. I'm too old, but good for you. And with Beyond O, I decided I wanted to spend a year without doing any courses. Once again, my body was healed. I finally knew how to have an orgasm. I realized, it wasn't that my body couldn't do it. I needed to feel safe in my body. But I took a year
mm,
off from being with any partners, with any courses, with any toys. And I just listened to my body every day for, 15 to 45 minutes a day. and got to know my body for the first time, at the time I was 50, 51.
Mhm.
And what was interesting, because I wanted to go back to these people and say, you don't need the courses. You don't need to go to see the yoni massage therapist in Australia. You don't need to go to this extra expert who will give you your orgasm. You are, the best guru on your body. I wanted people to know their bodies. So after that year, I realized, I was like, that was the most sensual year of my life. And I was the one that gave it to myself. So Beyond O is about that year, and of dealing with, being my own best partner, and also the consequences of speaking up.
Wow, I love guru of your body. You got me right there. And I love that you touch on you don't have to use outside sources. You don't have to use tools. I mean, yes, it's very fun to play with the toys. It's very fun to like
Absolutely.
explore and try new things, but if you don't truly know your own body, what gift are you truly giving yourself if you can't use the tools that were given to you when you were put on this planet, you know? And that includes your mind and your body, you know? Uh, I I it really it sparks now I really wanna read the book. When is it coming? Oh, goodness, Betsy, amazing. I mean, you really are opening up this unbelievable area for both women and men to explore. And the fact that you touched on going back to former partners, and I can't even imagine going back to partners and saying, by the way, never orgasmed with you. And I can imagine it completely becomes this ego thing, like you said. Instantly the only thing they're hearing is, I I never brought her to orgasm, over, "Wow, how can I help you through this? How can I explore with you so that we can bring you there?" Wouldn't that be a more powerful relationship with someone when you 2 can dance in this way and do that for each other, you know?
Yeah, and you know what? Two of the men from my past, actually, after my sharing, had shared that they had been molested as a
Mhm.
preteen by babysitters. So it
Mm,
goes both ways, and that they had some shame to it. So you start seeing how, like I said, I was just trying to figure out myself. I was trying to figure out why I was staying quiet, why I wasn't expressing myself about, when trauma was happening to me. And the same thing with these men. So it has called in more authentic conversation. And can we have these conversations without, um, once again, reacting, as we were saying, just by listening deeply? And I've had some beautiful experiences with both men of from their 20s through their 70s who have read my book. Their partners read it, they pass it on, and they said, you've really opened up so much authentic conversation, communication, and deeper sensuality than we'd been experiencing. And thank you, for you speaking up so that we could feel safe to share what's happened to us. And to me, that's true, deep intimacy.
yes, and empowerment and giving giving the space and holding the space for men as well, I think is really important. I think we're learning a lot about that more, that men are being open to sharing that, you know what, I've been abused too. I have been in a position too where I need to hold space for myself, and I would like for others to hold that area as well. So yes, to the guys out there as well who are listening, uh, we hold space and love you as well, and we need to love ourselves. It's so much about being kind to our mind, as I always say, and also just being kind to self, because that is where the empowering and intimate conversations really happen, when we connect to self and connect to others in that same capacity. So thank you for sharing that. That's great. Moving on to
Mhm.
Write On. This is your next book. It's a daily writing practice for anyone with a story to tell. And we all have a story to tell. Every single one of us on the planet has a valid story to tell.
The idea was just to use a daily writing practice as a way to express ourselves, and especially people come to me saying, well, I read your story. I want to write a book. I don't know where to start. Well, so many of the chapters from my book came from a writing prompt. As writers, storytellers, we have an idea of the story we want to tell.
Mhm.
And just like that, mentor told me, 10 years ago, of your story is not about your life between US and Africa. This is what your story is about. That's what happens when I gather with circles of women and listen to their stories. There's this one line in their story, and it's like 10% of the story, and that's the true story. So the writing prompts are a way just to start moving around the energy in our soul and start expressing it, so we really do get to those stories that we want to tell. And it's also a way to move from a daily journal writing practice, which is just, dear journal, this is what
Mhm.
happened to me, this was so bad, this was so good, into let's become storytellers. So the prompt
Mhm.
is a way, and the book gives feedback on telling a story with a beginning, middle, and end, telling a story that we can share. Because in the end, either someone's going to tell a story about you, or you're going to tell that story. And I'd rather me be the one to tell the story. The other
Yeah.
reason that I wrote it was I realized when I first started doing book readings with Autobiography of an Orgasm and Beyond O, I'd written, the books, and I'd healed my body, and I felt, good in the world and safe in my body, and I was healthy and no more sore throats. But every time I would do a reading, my throat would constrict, like my whole body would flush, and I would start, literally, like everything would contract, and I could, barely breathe, and I would start to cry when I was reading my story. And I'm like, I've healed, from this. I'm good. I'm good. But my voice was not healed. My voice was not healed from all those years of not speaking up. And I thought, oh, the only thing more intimidating than writing the story down and sharing it is speaking it out loud. And for me, at this point in life, I'm 57. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to challenge myself to speak my story out loud. So with Write On, it's a way not just to, if we want to write a book or just a daily writing practice devotion, but it's also a way if you want to. I have speakers use it. I have people who need to write a blog, and these, they're just 15-minute prompts, one line, and you just start writing, and you don't think through it. Just like with Qoya, you don't think it out. You just allow, you take the spirit on as your dance partner, and see what comes through. And over again, I have women and men say to me, wow, I've never told anybody that story. Wow, I've forgotten about that story. And these are the stories we want to access as storytellers. And then you'll begin to see, you think you know the story you want to tell, but there are so many unexpressed stories of our hearts. And those are the things that come through in these writing prompts.
Well, okay, this book has to happen for me because I've been sitting here the last couple months, and for about 6 months now, I've been really on the fence about writing a book, and I have a feeling that this will help a lot of people actually. And it seems like in this times especially, we're seeing a lot of creativity because people are in their homes, and we're starting to open the country, but people are in their homes, and they're trying to access different ways of healing and therapeutic means and being creative. And we're seeing people writing songs and journaling and books and creating programs. And if anything, I know in my own from my own story that I'm wanting to tell, and I've been talking about writing a book for a while. Sometimes you just need a little guidance, and this sounds like a really good guide to helping you through the process. So you're not just journaling Dear Diary every day, which is again very therapeutic to journal, to gratitude journal, to write your thoughts. But this seems like it gives you a focus in a way, so that you're not just all over the place.
It does. And women who come on my writing retreats, and sometimes I'll do very, very small retreats of 4 to 6 to 8 women who are very focused on writing a book. And I always say, you don't have to come to Bali or France to write your book, but this is a place where you're going to take yourself seriously as a writer, and also be nourished with good food, and then feedback on your stories. And but what I'll, they'll come with the idea of the story, that the book that they think they're writing, and they'll leave with
Mhm.
uh, a book, the book that came out of them through a writing prompt. One woman last year released a book called Elamor Sana. It's Love Heals in
Mhm.
English. She's from Colombia, Tatiana Arias, a very popular empowerment public speaker there. And I hope she starts coming to the US as well. But she was coming to on my retreat to write a book on financial happiness. And I said, I don't do self help, and you should work with a guide who can help you in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. And she said, no, I read your book, Autobiography of an Orgasm. I want to work with you, and I'll write in English, and then we'll translate it to Spanish, which it was released in both English and Spanish. But the point of this is the book she came to write was Financial Happiness. The book she
Mhm.
ended up writing, Elamor Sana, Love Heals, came out of a writing prompt during day 3 of our retreat, which was tell an unexpressed story of your heart.
Mm.
So
Love
yeah,
it.
writing prompts. So right now, the writing prompts, there are 365 days. So you just pick a number between 1 and 365, and I'm going to tell you what the prompt is from the book.
18.
Okay. So once again, you can do it as, in order, or you just open up randomly.
Mhm.
Okay. So day 18, tell about something you made, or tell about something someone made for you. And this was inspired by June 8th, 2018. My daughter Lucy called me, and I could tell she was upset. I was in an airport lounge waiting for a flight, wondering if it was bad news about family. Through her tears, she said, Anthony Bourdain died. Lucy loves cooking and feeding people, and she loved Anthony Bourdain. I think Bourdain appealed to so many because he used food as a place to connect with people. His show wasn't just about food. His meals created stories. His stories were about love of food and of people and of places. The prompt is tell about something you made, or tell about something someone made for you. So once again, you would start with the prompt, and sometimes the story will end up being about, something you made for someone, or it might take you back to something your, great grandmother used to make for your mother when she was a
Mhm.
little girl. Or it might not even be about that. It just will take you in another direction. But the idea is to only write for 15 minutes. Once again, to give yourself a container for it. And then if you like what's coming through, then go back to it later. Sometimes I'll write, the prompt, and it's like, this is, it's just write whatever's coming through. And it'll be the very last line that I realize, oh, that's the story I want to tell. But it'll be the line that I write right at 15 minutes. So it's no attachment. It might be the story about, what specifically about the prompt, or it might be something else. But it's really trusting, like I said, your spirit to lead you to be your co-writer.
Also, not you're taking away that element of overwhelmment. There is an element of being overwhelmed by I have to sit down and write a book. Where do I start? Do I start with the chapters? Do I start with the title? Chapter, it can be very overwhelming. So, just in that short piece that you just shared about the daily prompt and what the prompt is, it allows the creative juices to flow. And this kind of goes really well with how you think as you mentioned, you go in and you think you are going to write this kind of book about this thing. It's similar to when I have clients coming to me, my havening techniques clients, who come in, they have a presenting issue, they want to get to the heart of it, they want to heal. And when I'm coaching and working with my clients, 99% of the time when they come in for their sessions, we're not even talking about the presenting issue that was actually there in that actual moment. It goes so much deeper, and I think that's like in any kind of session of therapeutic means. When you go and you talk to someone as well, you go in there with ambition and like you're voraciously wanting to talk about something. And then you realize that's just the catalyst to something much deeper. So it's almost like a prompt in a therapeutic means by giving people the space, focus on it for 15 minutes, see how it grows and changes, because it's probably not going to be what you went in there thinking that chapter was going to be about. That's a really brilliant idea. I love it.
Yeah, well, and the other thing that I notice, like every January, people, have New Year's resolutions,
Mhm.
they're not drinking for the month of January and drinking green juice and exercising every day.
Mhm.
But like I was in my 30s, like I was physically fit,
Mhm.
uh, and had this life that looked good, but I didn't feel good in my body. I didn't feel safe in my body. And just like Qoya, writing was part of my healing. That was very, very unexpected. I did not expect writing to be healing and therapeutic, but writing is like spring cleaning. It's like a detox for your spirit. My friend Seo Long, who's a shamanic astrologer, said to me once, our body breathes through inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Our
Mhm.
soul breathes through experience, express, experience, express. So for me, even though I was a writer when I was young, a journalist, and then TV journalist and documentary filmmaker, I was always writing somebody else's story. And it was so interesting that I was avoiding my story. And when I did start writing, the thing that scared me was my stories that came up were so painful, nobody would want to read them, and I wouldn't want to share them. And this is what I say to my writers in my circles, or if you're doing, the writing prompts, sometimes our soul just needs a detox. So giving yourself that 15 minutes to allow whatever needs to come through. And, sometimes there's pages and pages and pages of old unexpressed stuff that needed to come through. And then you get to that place where the true your true purpose of what your spirit wants to say can express itself, but it's not going to happen until we do this little detox for our for how we express ourselves after so many years of not expressing ourselves.
Yeah, giving ourselves the space to express is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. I'm very much looking forward to reading Right On and helping me through my own journey of writing the book. So thank you for putting that out there.
You're welcome.
And this comes to the latest book that you've been writing, which is soon to be released this summer, Chasing Temples. Share a little bit about that, because that one I don't have any background about because it's still in process. But
Yeah.
what is Chasing Temples?
Well, chasing temples was this point of looking in my life, and it was not just recent years, but as somebody that was a seeker. I think so many women come to the seeking point after maybe we've been married. If you get divorced,
Mm.
maybe after children, of is this it? What is I was raised in the Methodist church. I was raised go to high school. I actually went through high school in 3 years, college in 3 years, got married, got divorced, got married again, got a job in TV news. I was on this fast track because this is what was modeled to me in
Mhm.
generations of my family. This is you get married, you have children, you maybe have a career. I never thought of what my soul's purpose was in the world. What is that anyway? So
Mm.
I found myself traveling both for work and then just for curiosity to other countries, and beginning to explore the churches and temples, and realizing that what was missing in all these places, I wasn't connecting to them. I went to the tree in India where Buddha said to be enlightened, and I was told to cover up and my head and shoulders and be respectful, and I did. But I was standing there, waiting for some type of sign. And the same thing when I went to the place where Mother Mary is believed to
Mhm.
have died, and I was trying to be spiritual, but I am like, why isn't she talking to me? Or why isn't Mary Magdalene or sending me signals? And why am I not getting these messages that other people are? Am I not being spiritual enough? And what I found was, both in the temples and spiritual communities and spiritual leaders and gurus that I went to listen to, um, instead of finding a message from them, I realized I was reclaiming lost parts of myself. And
Mm.
these parts of myself, like my body, my voice, the voice of the mother in the world. And so Chasing Temples is about all the places in my life that I had lost. during all parts of my, life, both childhood, adulthood, being married, as a wife and mother, giving birth, not having a choice of how I gave birth because I was kind of shamed into, well, this is the way it's always been done, and you are, not responsible, and you're putting
Mhm.
your baby in danger if you want to give birth at home. And giving birth and my children immediately being given their father's last name. And once again, I'm proud of their father and his last name. But all of a sudden I question, like, why is this? Just like I question, why didn't I feel safe expressing myself? Why, where is the voice of the mother? So that's what the book, I'm really proud of the book. And I think, many people, especially women, will go, oh yeah, it's like we talk about soul retrievals. It's, a voice retrieval. It's a body retrieval. It's a spirit retrieval. It's a retrieval of the feminine. It's a retrieval of the, balance of the masculine in relationships. And it's also, takes you on adventures all over the world. So that will come out in August 2020. And just like the first book, because it always makes me, I'm still uncomfortable sometimes getting up and speaking it. I'm doing a solo show around it too, and there's a great scene about, the one place, oddly enough, that I reclaimed my voice was, in on a dark night in Zimbabwe when I came into contact with, a lion, and I won't
Mm.
say any more about it, but it's it's yeah.
All right, you gotta leave it there so then when we get to read it, we know exactly where we're going, but,
Yeah.
that it's it's so interesting to me when you mention reclaiming lost parts of yourself, and you created quite a visual going to all these places. I remember that myself when I went to Israel, and I was in all these holy places and wanting answers, and I was a young college graduate right out of SMU and wanting answers then. I wonder if I had the answers then, how my life would be different. But that's an odd place to go because part of our life and the lessons come with the time. So, I remember being in those places waiting for things to happen, waiting for answers to come, but I really truly wasn't being authentic to myself. And then even taking different courses, the landmark forum where they ask you that you're going to pop at some point, it's going to come to you, sitting there watching people around me in tears thinking like it's not happening for me. It's really just being present and just really learning more about who we are. So that in itself, I think we're all chasing temples in a way.
We are.
Um,
Yeah,
oh
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, one
Mm,
thing that I'll add is, maybe beyond the voice and the body and claiming motherhood, um, in, a story that actually was hard to tell, but it was an important one, was I was in, India near the border of Tibet. And once again, this was a place before I'd done all my, healing around my body, but I felt, I was like, well, I feel safe here. I'm with a, Buddhist, Lama that's, very important man. And I was, going to be interviewing him that day for a short documentary, and I went to get him. And once again, whenever I traveled with him and his followers, I was always very respectful. I would bow to him, never touched
mm,
him. Just very, I was there as a journalist. And I went to get him, and he knocked on his door and he pulled me in, and he pulled me to him, and he began just shoving his tongue down my throat. Once again, I pushed him away. I didn't say anything, but I pushed him away. And it was that moment. Here I went to this, travel with this holy person to learn how to be more holy like him. And what I did was reclaim the holiness in me. It was nobody was
mm.
going to give it to me, and I reclaimed it in the midst of assault. So there are, once again, all these ways in the world that we give ourselves away. And as much as I didn't like that experience, it was this, um, uh, it was a huge, eye-opening. And once again, I've never shared that story. I've shared it once, but of it was important because at that moment I was like, why is this happening to me? Why is this always happening to me? And I was like, oh, I'm the one that has to start reclaiming myself. And especially my
Mm.
body is holy no matter what has happened to it in the past. My body is holy. My voice is holy. My life is holy.
Yeah, and it's also being open to forgiving yourself too. The whole why am I doing this? Why is this happening to me? Um, we're not really giving ourselves the space to say, okay, I stop judging me, stop judging self. So yeah, I'm sure that was quite an eye opener, as you said,
Mm.
and reclaiming the lost part of yourself. So here's a question for you as we begin to wrap things up. What's the one thing you would tell your younger self with the knowledge you have now? If you were to go back, what would you tell Betsy?
I would tell her to always listen to her body. She always knew to go into nature to heal, and I would also tell her that her voice matters, and that even if other people aren't listening, it's important for her to speak up just to hear help herself in her own voice.
I love that. Thank you so much. Betsy, what an honor and a pleasure to finally be able to have this beautiful conversation with you and share it with others so that they can hold space for themselves, reclaim the lost parts of themselves, build themselves, and just be kind to themselves.
Mm.
That's the most important thing. And I want to just leave our listeners now. If you have any questions that you have about any of the books we spoke about that Betsy has written, The Autobiography of an Orgasm, Beyond O, Right On, which is the daily practice for anyone with a story to tell, which we all have, and the soon to be released Chasing Temples. Or if you want to learn about her solo shows or where she's teaching or where she's dancing, you can find that at betsybmurphy.com. I'll actually put that as a link in the podcast for anybody. But on that note, Betsy, what a pleasure. Thank you for being here. And thank you for making yourself part of my journey and the journey of listeners so that we can empower ourselves to live our best lives.
Thank you so much, Hilary.
And thank you for listening to this episode of Holistically Speaking. Make sure to visit me online at hilaryrusso.com and follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Hilary Russo. The show is produced by Alan Seals with music by Litbone Redding. And to keep listening, all you have to do is find me at Holistically Speaking on Apple Podcast and Spotify and everywhere else you tune in. Until next time, be safe, be well, and don't forget to laugh.